are doing that in the process of making, but I see it as kind of like a mythic mirror of impulses that are happening at the moment in our earthly experience. There's kind of a collective feeling that we're at the end of an era, that we're somehow crossing a threshold, and that current events or recent events have kind of caused people to reevaluate their life purpose. Last year there was that great resignation, and there were that kind of things like that kind of played out this idea, and this kind of uncertainty and inability to plan futures in our old ways has allowed time for people to be more in the present moment and reflective. So it's a portrait of a girl, and she's looking at an abacus, and in my mind she's kind of contemplating our current circumstances and maybe strategizing or calculating alternative mathematic sequences for this new world order. The abacus has been an ongoing theme in my work. I've used it quite a lot, and I kind of see it as a symbol of what we value, thinking about what we value and how we measure that. And as an artist, I often think of myself as an artifact producer. In the past, I've created fictions, and then my sculptures have been fictional artifacts to support my writing, and I've gone away from that process, but I still think of my sculptures as being artifact-like. The timber that I've used, I like to use local materials as much as possible. So the figure, the portrait, is made from rewa, carved from, the figure is carved from rata, which was quite hard, and then the frame of the abacus is rewa, and there's wood beads, but also coconut shell beads, sort of more referencing our location in the Asia Pacific. Am I to click on the different images, or does that? Oh yeah, right. Yes, and so wood is something that I often use. I'm really attracted to wood as material, and because I'm conceptually thinking about time and history a lot, it seems like a really apt material. I love it how, especially when you're carving, you're peeling back layers of these timber rings, which like these visual representations of time and history in the material. And time is something that I've been thinking about a lot as well. The pattern, it's sort of meant to look like an hourglass, that pattern in the middle of the abacus, which is a new thing, a new kind of design aspect in the abacuses that I've been making. I created the sculptures, started while I was on a residency at Karikari House in the Waitakares in Auckland, and I was thinking about time being elastic, especially with the lockdowns. That time seemed to be drawn out, but then there was rapid changes with regulations, and as soon as we were out of lockdown, everything was sped up to kind of make up for lost time, and that sense of time and space being elastic was kind of echoed in my residency experience, because on the beaches there, or the main beach there, there'd be I'd go for walks, and the mountains would seem quite close, but then it would take me a surprisingly long time to get to the foothills, and it felt like time and space was quite different there. And the Mist Dweller title came from some writing that I read about the Māori fairy people in that area, who were called Dwellers of the Mist, and I just thought that sounded so lovely and poetic, and I kind of thought of all the residents in that area being like Dwellers of the Mist. There's often this very bush-clad mountainous area, and there's mist rising from the mountains there, so it just seemed like a great title that brought up a lot of imagery. And the abacus has been an ongoing theme in my work, and it's had many iterations in its form and in the concepts that I've linked to. Initially, I was thinking about the nature of reality and molecular structures, and I began curving the rods, kind of referencing some Colin McCann paintings of abstracted headlands and waterfalls, and the design has kind of evolved from there, but it's always been a link to landscape and thinking about the divine mathematics in nature, like the Fibonacci spiral and things like that. So often I'm using the golden ratio when I'm working out the dimensions for the abacuses. That's something that I think about. So I do kind of think of it as being a kind of a mythic kind of illustration of some kind of collective element in our psyche at this moment in history. I guess that's what it feels like for me, but I love it when other people bring their own interpretations to the work. So I'm very keen to hear what anyone else has to say or think about it. I just got something that popped up. Did you see that?
Oh, was that me? I think I pressed the raise hand.
Oh, okay.
I just got a question for you. It's really beautiful work, and I was just wondering where did you source the wood from?
So different places. Errata, there's a guy that I go to down the line near Walton, I think is where he's based, and he's got a farm and he's got lots of timber drying sheds on his property. So I buy it, buy it from him. And the rewa was actually, that was floorboards from an Auckland Council building that was pulled down. Yeah, so they're recycled.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Wanda. I'm trying to figure out how to unshare my screen. But yeah, awesome. Thanks for that. We will flow on to the next person, and if anyone thinks of more questions for each other, we can ask some more at the end too. So yeah, thanks Wanda for that. Would anyone like to go next?
I don't mind.
As your presentation, can you just remind me what it's called?
Amplexus memorialis, I think.
Got it. Cool.
Here we are. So yeah, kia ora koutou, ko Sue Nelson toku ingoa, no wananga te taipo tine o Canada, ke te noho o ki Tamaki Makaurau, and thanks for having me. I'm going to read a little bit because I just get a bit scatterbrained when I try to free flow. So as per the little artist statement there that was sent in with the artwork, this work is called Amplexus Memorialis, which is Latin for memory of a hug. And it's sort of a comment on the slow extinction of everyday physical contact in a pandemic era. So it's basically the small gaps of a hug between myself and my lovely daughter that were cast in plaster and then bronzed. And I chose bronze as a medium because it seemed to sort of help turn it into something important, sort of a formalized and poignant kind of relic or something that you might see in a museum one day far into the future. So yeah, I just thought I would share the process of making it. So I'm not sure if people have worked in bronze before, but it was my first time and it was quite involved and I thought it was quite interesting. But do I have control over the slides or?
I'm not too sure, so maybe just say next slide and I'll do it for you.
Next slide. So yeah, this is my daughter who was 16 at the time and me standing in a tub in the Elam workshops. And basically we had a technician there help us because we were wrapped in plastic wrap, and she poured plaster into our embrace. And it took about a half an hour to stand hugging, which was lovely for me, but my daughter wasn't overly impressed. At 16, you know, sort of don't want anything to do with mom anymore. And I kind of told her it would only take about 10 minutes. So yeah, but it was fun anyway. And so once we kind of pulled ourselves apart, we were left with these pieces that were kind of the negative shape of that hug, and they looked a bit to me like fossils, with the inverse shapes of both of our bodies kind of creating each piece, and complete with the sort of textures of skin and belly buttons and things like that. And yeah, it was just sort of this kind of banal object that actually was full of story and love and energy. So yeah, next slide, please. And this is just the casting process. So I had to sort of take each of the, there was 10 pieces all up, and cast them with pinky seal and plaster crusts for support, and then reform them using wax in preparation for the lost wax process in the foundry. Yep, next slide. So once the wax pieces were created, there's this great long process of building up the crust. So each piece had to be kind of dipped into a special slip and a fine grade, and then subsequent various more coarse grades of sand, or the special sand. So, you know, it was like 3 hours between each dip, and set, and so it took days and days of just dipping and crusting. And then at the end, you put them over this metal grate and blowtorch them until all of the wax drips out. And yep, next slide. So this is burying them in a bed of sand with just the opening left for pouring the bronze. And these are the bronze ingots, which are quite beautiful in themselves, actually, which is why I thought I'd just include that. Next slide, please. Yep, so then poured the molten bronze into each piece and had to leave them overnight to cool. And then basically crack the crust off afterwards, and you're left with these sort of burnt metal pieces that need a lot of cleaning up, which is on the next slide. Yeah, so then it's a matter of like a couple of weeks in the metal workshop, just trying to get them pretty and cutting off the feet and things that you had to include to get a proper pour and stuff like that. So this was actually created as part of a postgrad dip at Elam that finished sort of early last year, and I've since sort of done a bit of work on the patina since then. But yeah, it was part of a bigger story, which in the next slide is a little image of it along with the other works involved. It was called The Flesh of All Things. So as you can see, some of my work is really eclectic. It's kind of all about material and story for me. So it's this collision of, like, I don't know, sort of figment and matter is what I like to call it, because it's just whatever it needs to be is what the medium I'll reach for that day. And so we've got a torn paper light box. We've got a printmaking rag that's actually beautiful, I think, in a gold frame. We've got a bronze hug and a pile of hard candy lollies that are the Dharma Chakra, one a day, take one a day sort of pills, if you will, or lollies, and then middle finger candles and plasticine and clay and yarn. It's a bit all over the place, but they all kind of have this, yeah, you have to look a bit closer to see what sort of story is underneath everything. The Flesh of All Things was a Merleau-Ponty term. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that guy, but it sort of points to the less obvious things in our sight, or seeing with all senses. And so that's taking in the negative shapes and the positive shapes and the spatial distances between things and energies and forces that are created by all of them, and the viewer. And hence, like, the walls are painted this color because when you stood in that space, it actually kind of like glowed or emanated something else. Yeah. So on the next slide is my little shout out. So if anybody wants to see other work or better pictures, those are my deets. So yeah, thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Thank you. So that was lovely. The process was so cool to see. Really, really fun. So thank you for that. What's the scale of the work?
Well, the largest piece in the pile, I don't know if you want to put that picture back up, but the largest piece is, like, if you can imagine two bodies, with that big kind of cavern right here. So it's, that's the biggest piece. And then all the other bits are kind of, relative to that, I suppose. But it's very heavy, each piece is obviously not too bad on its own. But I actually drove it down to Whakatane because just posting it was just going to be ridiculous. And I'll probably go back and pick it up. But yeah, it's a nice road trip.
Cool, thanks for that.
Also, I just want to shout out that grad show went unseen because of COVID. It was cancelled. And the same cohort, not everyone is involved, but the same cohort, we've launched another show that's actually, if anyone's in Auckland, I don't know, but that's actually on the 26th to the 30th of March at the Tuesday Club. So yeah, everyone's welcome.
Awesome, thanks for sharing. So I love the hands-on process of like plaster, and then you go like make negative, positive to get the end result. It's quite in real life, it's quite a real fragile work, even though it's made with bronze. Like it feels like it looks really light, and as if you would touch it and maybe like get something like on your hand, like yeah, it's kind of interesting work, and yeah, real poignant in this digital age, I guess. Amazing. It would be so great to be able to connect with people artsy in it, but it's like, yeah, it can definitely.
I mean, the hug will never die, but it was just oh my God, what if it dies? What if it's like a forgotten artifact of history one day? Won't happen.
So yes, thanks so much for sharing that. Would anyone like to go next?
Oh yeah, okay, next.
Okay, cool.
Oh yeah, just with my slides, can you just like flick through like how long is maybe like 15 minutes too long? But maybe just like every 30 seconds, every 20 or 30 seconds.
Okay, cool. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, go.
Cool. Kia ora tātou katoa. Ko ngai te rangi te iwi, ko mauau te maunga ki tauranga moana, ko te awa nui te awa, ko ngai tu kairangi te hapu, no hoki te kaahau ki te tai o Pautini, no Otaki toku kāinga I nai nei. Tēnā koutou ngā mihi nui kia koutou katoa. And yeah, thanks Israel for bringing us all together. And yeah, so my name's Louie Zalk-Neal. And yeah, this artwork I've made is called Mana Tipua Tuku Iho. And this is how it was installed in a previous exhibition, but it's made from tikoko fiber and driftwood from the beach here in Otaki. And yeah, it's kind of like I've used it in some performances and videos as well, and so it's functional as kind of like wings, but also flippers that like takaruru that you can wear on your feet, which I was like thinking about how animals have these like fins and flippers and like seals and fish and all of these things to move in the water, and I was thinking what it would be like to be able to do that myself. And yeah, so I've been learning how to use tikoko and making these the miro, the two-ply rope, and it's like a process where you have to like soften the leaves from a tikoko tree, which is like a cabbage tree, and then scrape them away. And I use my toki here, my toki pounamu, to scrape the flesh away from them. And yeah, it's like the weave is, it's pretty strong because they're really strong fibers, and they're used normally in like to make fishing nets and things that are in the in salt water because they don't break down very easily, and so it seems like the perfect material for me to use to make these. And these aren't like a traditional thing that were made in the past or anything, but so I was kind of just figuring out how I could make it using some customary techniques, and just like while I'm exploring my whakapapa and all of that. And those are the straps there, which are they're like in the style of kawe, which are like these big back straps that you use to carry loads on your back. And I went to Te Papa and saw in the behind the scenes, and they had some there that Isaac, who's the Mātauranga Māori curator, he showed me those. And so I've kind of been bringing together different techniques and different different ways of making things and figuring it all out as I go. And the binding there, like all of the ropes that you can see, the toda is that's all made from tikoka and twisted by hand. So it takes a long time, but yeah, it's really satisfying work. And because I also made a video that that's been exhibited a couple of times as well, and this is me wearing them as flippers, and I wore them in the water, and a lot of this project comes from because I lived in Wellington for when I was making this, and in Te Whanganui-Atara, which is Wellington Harbour, there's a pūrākau, like a myth story about two taniwha called Ngake and Whātaitai, and they're these two big taniwha that used to live in the harbour when it was still a lake, and eventually they grew too big, and so they decided to jump out of the lake into Te Moana o Raukawa, into Cook Strait, and then so one of them managed to jump out, and then the other one, Whātaitai, he like half jumped out and then like got stuck on the land, and then the story is like about how it like says about how he like dies and turns into stone, which is like one transformation, and then his spirit turns into a bird. And the different versions that I've like heard of this pūrākau, they talk about the bird being a female bird, and so it's like transforming from a male taniwha to a female bird, and then flying up to the top of Mātairangi, which is the hill, Mount Victoria, and then flying off into taniwha heaven. And so that, I don't know, that's kind of like it seems like really casual that the in these stories that the taniwha changes gender so easily, and like for me as a trans person as well as a takatapui, it's like I kind of see these as like tipuna that are like have this really deep grounding in the landscape, and it just feels very like empowering to know that that's been part of Te Ao Māori since the beginning, and especially in the landscape where I was living as well. And so this that's some more from screenshots from the video, and just like using these, like wearing these on my feet, I feel like I'm kind of embodying these tipuna, which is like something that everybody does every day as well. Like you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for your ancestors, and but just to like think about how our ancestors have changed over time, and like that at one point our ancestors were actually like I don't know, reptiles and stuff, and and so it's this film was filmed by Connor Fitzgerald, who I collaborated with on a few projects before, and we shot it through like a pair of binoculars. Like had the camera like up against this old pair of binoculars, and so it made like this kind of fuzzy sort of, I don't know, like portal looking thing, and that circle is kind of like the portal shape that I have the black background, the black circle behind the artworks as well. And so it's just like this, like moving into a different dimension, and like this like connection between everyday life and spirituality, being able to make that that connection through a portal. That's kind of what I was thinking with that. And yeah, this was we filmed it in like when it was pretty cold as well. It was like winter time, but so I didn't manage to stay in the water very long. And now it's summertime and I can't use them because they're on display. But when I get them back, I'll go for another swim. And oh yeah, and then the next pictures are all part of the making process of it. And so these are all the tikoka leaves that we that I gathered from Mātairangi from that mountain, Mount Victoria. And yeah, it's like the process was, yeah, these are the ends that I like beat them with the rock and then scrape the flesh away, and it makes it like exposes these really strong fibers. And let's see, oh yeah, and that's the fibers as well that you get from the long leaves that they're kind of like stained green when you scrape them, and then they like lighten up and turn like a straw color sort of. And yeah, like twisting them together just by hand, like because you can do it on your leg. You might have seen people do that before, but these fibers are like really coarse, and so I tried doing it on my leg, and it like kind of scrapes your leg when you do it. And so I just do it by hand, which is slower, but probably for the better. That part there is one of the kawe, the straps that went over my feet. And there's my toki. Oh, and my toki is also bound with tikoka, which is a nice connection. Oh, and this is my friend and collaborator, Rangi Marie Kiel, and she's yeah, in this picture she's collecting pia karo, which is like the sap from a karo tree, and which we use to kind of like glue the connections of the wood together. And we like drilled a hole and then kind of made it. Yeah, it's kind of like glue, but I think we probably could have processed it a bit different to make it a bit stronger. But it's got a really nice smell as well. I think you can like heat it up, and then it turns into more of like a bitumen or something, I think it's called. But yeah, it's still pretty strong though. And yeah, that's some of the little details that just to like hold all of the bits together so that it can be like strapped onto the wood properly. And we also did a performance, like an activation. This was at Enjoy Contemporary Art Space in Te Whanganui-a-Tara in Wellington, and so we kind of constructed this way of bringing the takarere into the space and kind of enacting part of the pūrākau to like just make sure that the space was opened in the way that we wanted it to be, and we had some different taonga puoro as well, like this. There's like a little bottle. It's like a little medicine bottle that I had that I made it. I attached it to the big long string, and then and in that picture, Rangi Marie is spinning it round, and it makes like this kind of whistling sound. And yeah, so in the most of this performance part, I was using them as wings, and so it was like kind of that phase of the pūrākau. But yeah, I think it's kind of nice with these pūrākau that they are kind of flattened. It's like all of these, it's like time is kind of flattened, that it's like all of these things happen, they're like constantly happening at all times, is how I understand it. Because it's like the mountain is still there and the taniwha are kind of still there as well, and it's all just like constantly happening at the same time. And so when we can like draw on that energy and bring it all together. Yeah, and that's the last slide, so thanks. Anyone got any questions?
Very inspirational. I mean, and the detail and the fineness and the rope you created just makes me want to cry. It's just really incredible.
Oh, thank you.
And long processes are wonderful, aren't they? You can just kind of get in there and just be with that material. It's wonderful.
Yeah, and just like learn how all of the intricacies of it work and like what you can use it for and what it doesn't work well for. And
It will tell you.
yeah, for sure.
It's the boss.
I was going to ask that similar question. How long does it take to make a length of fiber of rope?
Well, with all of the beating and the scraping and all of that beforehand, it probably, I don't know, like I guess I could probably make like, if I collect like three leaves and then go through the whole process, then it would probably make like 2 meters of rope, and it would take probably like, I don't know, like 5 hours or something. There must be faster ways to do it, but it is nice, these long processes.
I kind of like too how it's like through the binocular, and I feel like when you're like kids, you know, they have those binoculars on the seaside shore, and then you can like, you're like peeking on things, like spying a little bit. But then the opposite is shown in the gallery, like it's just the black circle with the flipper wing things, and so yeah, it's like this whole different like story that it's like come to at the end, which I think is quite interesting, because the story behind how it got to the gallery right there, it's just so long and intricate, which is quite, it's quite interesting. I wish we could have shown the video as well.
Yeah.
Having the single sphere was really more like a spyglass, and then everything that you would associate with a spyglass. It's quite, and spyglasses are kind of, well, not kind of, they're older than binoculars. You know, they're more, you know, archaic. I mean, you can see them on the, you know, Captain Cook's ships coming in and stuff like that. So that's
I kind of like having this kind of old sort of vibe about things, because it feels like it's from the past when these sort of things were more underground or not accepted by the general society, and so kind of imagining these things as being from the past and happening in the past, and then seeing them now, it's quite cool.
Transcending, really strong imagery. Powerful.
Yeah. Ngā mihi, Louie, thank you so much for sharing that process. Also, shout out, I live in Matata in Ngāti Rangitahi whenua, so hei te mihi kia koe. That's beautiful to speak. Alex, did you want to go next?
Sure. Kia ora, everyone. My name's Alex Wilkinson. Israel, could you just share my little pictures? I would call myself a ceramic artist, so this was a little bit of a kind of a depart from the usual for me. I have a collaborator as well on this project that I'd like to acknowledge. His name is Ben Wilson. I have worked on a few projects with him. Are you good?
Sorry, just trying to find that. There you go. Got it.
Oh yeah. Okay, can we start with the that one? Yeah. Thank you. You knew exactly what I was after. Cool. So my work's mine and Ben's work is a video work. It's called 9 Perspectives, and it is basically just a grid of shells. It's a video work that's about 10 minutes long. So if you just go to the pictures of the whole shells, Israel. So this is so basically what happens is, it's okay, don't worry about it. The shells, they're actual seashells. They were collected and they start off as completely formed just as they come. And throughout the, like, about a 5-minute process, they disintegrate and each of them disintegrates in their own way, and then they kind of form back together, and it forms this really clean loop. Now, this process happens semi-slowly, but is actually pretty much in real time. It's part of a larger body of work for my sculpture honours from Wintec. Basically, I set out to destroy ceramics. Ceramics are so permanent as a material. You know, we're going to dig up my cups in 10,000 years. So this larger project, was basically about destroying things that are mostly made to be permanent. And through this, found this tiny little process. It's an actual shell, and this process actually happens. We manipulate the shell beforehand, but then we just add water, and it kind of collapses on its own. Each shell kind of peels back in its own kind of beautiful way, depending on how it was formed, the density of the calcium carbonate in different areas, and what happened. Can you just go to the other photo, Israel? What happened is we actually discovered a fossil shell, which was so exciting. It's the shell in the bottom middle that made the biggest kind of powdery pile, and yeah, unfortunately we'll never be able to recreate it. They were destroyed in this process, but we managed to capture it on video, and yeah, there's some other physical work that goes alongside this work, and a whole series of videos as well, all about kind of destruction, entropy, transformation. We were looking for this kind of moment where something just happens, and in that kind of found this process and celebrated that. Yeah, so there we go. So there's the individual shells before they started their process, before the water was added. Thank you, that's lovely. The fossil shell, which is the bottom middle, he took the longest to transform. Some of them, like the middle shell, were much less dense, and so their transformation happened quickly. So I think the longest video is the fossil, and that's what they're all kind of scaled to in terms of time. And some, yeah, the shells just broke down in the most amazing way. It's a very long artwork, like 10 minutes long. Kind of something that you want to look around the show and then come back to, and it's changed. And yeah, probably we'll carry on looking at this kind of weird little reaction that we found. Does anyone have any questions?
So what did you apply to the shell to make it disintegrate? I don't know that
we didn't apply anything. I kind of basically don't really want to tell you, but
you don't have to tell me.
We actually fired it through a ceramic process. So originally this work came from building blocks of clay that were then fired, and I kind of hoped that the shells would disappear from, like parts of shells would disappear from them, and create like gaps in the piece, so it kind of looked like the piece was breaking around itself. And then actually just discovered that like the shells themselves break down in the most incredible way.
Wow.
That's really cool. It made me think of the Ai Weiwei dropping the Tang Dynasty pot, but this is a much more subtle kind of slower process.
I love that work. For those of you who don't know, Ai Weiwei bought incredibly valuable vase and broke it. And there's this one iteration of that work that's just the video of it in midair, like it's about to happen, and that's kind of what Ben and I were looking to capture. A lot of kind of these ceramic processes, like recycling clay and like kind of focusing on the materiality of the pieces doesn't often get highlighted because it's so transitional and hard to capture. So a lot, like this is where the video really came into it. Like we dissolved clay and we played around with a lot of calcium carbonate and all kinds of its forms, and it just happened that shells was one of these that made this kind of, it was a standalone work in the end. It didn't fit with the body of work. But
so are you looking more at transition than destruction, for lack of a better word. Because I think, did you use that at the beginning of your chat?
Yeah, so like that's a really interesting point. I set out to destroy things and instead transformed them. I was having a really mentally low point. I have depression and really just wanted to destroy things in an artistic way. And kind of what I learned from this was an honors project. It was like 1.5 years long because of COVID. And what I kind of ended up doing was creating these beautiful moments of transition. And it was frustrating because that's not what I set out to do. But sometimes the result is just better than what you were trying to achieve in the first place. And that's what the nature did. It didn't want to be destroyed. It wanted to kind of show a different process.
Nice.
Can you talk about how you? Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Could you talk about how you collaborated? Like, how did you both contribute to it?
Oh, so I'm purely like a ceramic artist. I have no experience in video whatsoever. Ben was studying at the same time as me at Wintec. We collaborated on a previous video where he filmed my, I'm into nerokomi, which is like the folding of coloured clay. I make functional wear. My brand is Mystery Creek Ceramics, if you want to have a look me up. Shameless plug. Anyway, so we collaborated on that video, and then I got really into this kind of process stuff. And Ben is completely video focused. He's a videographer, but really kind of we just would have these amazing meetings where we'd talk about all the things that are possible. And when you take ceramics and you mishmash it, or you take materials and mishmash it with video, like all the transitional things that I was kind of speaking about before. And so this was our 4th filming session that we got these. And basically I prep everything. I ring Ben and I'm like, cool, we're ready to go. We have an editing session. And then we talk about the next ideas and go again. So it's kind of like and luckily this collaboration will keep going. And it just goes round and round. And sometimes he'll text me and be like, we should do this. I'll be like, cool, let's do that. So yeah, it's a really kind of spontaneous collaboration that kind of appeared out of just a one project. So I'm really lucky to have someone like that. I wouldn't be able to do this work without him.
I just had a look at your website. Very nice. I'm gonna have to buy a mug now.
That is so kind. I was gonna like shove a picture of a mug in there as well, but I was like, nah, too cheeky.
Not at all. Promote. What was your website name again?
Mystery Creek Ceramics.
That's good stuff.
I specialize in the slowest and most arduous method of making pottery, where I don't have to paint, I don't have to design, I let the color and the clay do it everything for me, and I love it.
Is that a reference to like the Mystery Creek? Oh.
No, I lived there.
You live in Mystery Creek. Oh, yeah.
I live in Kihiki now, but you know it's too late. The brand's there, and it's quite cool.
Right. Well,
sorry. So, did you have a question?
No.
Sweetest.
No.
Well, I was going to say I'll go next if we're talking ceramics. If you're ready.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks heaps for sharing, Alex.
Yeah. So with my pictures, probably the diagram one, the drawing should go last, maybe, depending upon how you've got them organized.
Okay, I'll try my best. Let me just see.
We can go with anything.
Do you want this one first?
Yeah, that's okay. It's so minute, not that you can see. For those of you who've seen the show, that's my piece in the show. And it's called Remnant 8. I think, or Remnant 7, I can't remember. Really, I'm really struggling. Oh, first of all, I'm Leslie Falls. I'm in Hawke's Bay. I've been here in New Zealand for 40 years, which is longer than I lived in America. I have a hard time making stuff in a world full of stuff, and yet by nature, I'm just a fabricator. So really, I had kind of dedicated myself to only using things I had in my studio and not, I used to paint and everything was huge. Now everything I do is teeny. So these are remnants of a wool blanket I got at the op shop when they were still like for $1. Now they're $50. But anyway, and the pieces sewn onto it. Has anybody seen it in the show? Israel, you have, but anybody else? They're made out of porcelain. They're little. So I had this lump of porcelain I bought in 1994. That was, and it was definitely, it was like a brick. And I reconditioned it. I studied ceramics in 1973 and 4. And I had the most amazing teacher, and I haven't forgotten a thing he taught me. And as a result, when I had this brick hard, container of, or, bag of porcelain, I reconditioned it. And it's such a long story. I won't bore you with it. Anyway, I've started making these forms, which I was making back in 1994. And I call them quills. And they're really just a teeny little, actually, I've got one. I don't know if you can see that. Can you see how little it is? So it's a porcelain rod pointed at one end with a hole in the middle. So I've made tens of thousands of these. Anyway, so I was making those in 94, left them, started making them again. And then because I'm a maker, and then I had all this stuff, and what do you do? And I don't want to make stuff. And so I started sewing them onto scraps of wool I had. Maybe next slide, thank you. So then, and again, this is minute, I started, because they had holes in them, I started slotting them together and making these little sculptures, because they just, except I don't have my glasses on, they just slot together. And building these little environments, they're little like architectonic structures that if you look at them, they break, because the joints are, of course, very fragile. But there's something about the relationship between the point and the hole that just really gets me. And I love that connection. And just going back a little bit to process, because otherwise we'll be here until 10 o'clock. What as a mother, as a working mother, I always was working, trying to fit in making something between homework and vegetable cutting or whatever. And if I had something going, like the process of making these coils, I could just come in and do it for half an hour and then go and, turn the sausages or whatever. And so all of my work has had that sort of repetitive manufacture. I really love pins, just straight pins. And I've got a whole blanket full of 9,000 little 1 centimeter pins, and it's like a pelt. It's really beautiful. So there's something going on there. I'm not quite sure. More recently, I've got heaps of notes, but I don't want to delay too much. More recently, next slide, I've been making these, again, they're minute. These are, I call them remnants for country women. So it's horsehair, scraps of fabric, little pieces of porcelain I've made. They're bound together. Either the horsehair's tied, or I will bind with thread, although now I'm inspired to make my own rope. Sometimes there's a feather. I'm kind of caught in, I think, maybe not particularly, but maybe a dangerous space of, here's that bad word, appropriation of the Native American, which I'm from America, obviously, that the wrapping and binding and horsehair and feathers, and it all just, I don't know, you guys some of you would deal with this. I mean, am I allowed to do that? I negate myself. I get started on something and think, oh no, I better not do that. And that's been a bit of a tough journey for me. But again, this is a matter of, these are scraps of fabric I have, feathers I've collected in our orchard, horsehair from the neighbor's horse. I have it all there, and I just manufacture these little these things are, the fabric bundles are maybe a centimeter square, maybe a bit bigger. So they're talisman. Next slide. So I also colored these quills, and there was a show a couple years ago now, it seems like light years ago, at the Hastings City Art Gallery, and I installed, there's some colored ones, 1,200. Those guys were great at that museum. If you ever want to, suggest, like, put in a exhibition proposal, the exhibition technician there is unbelievable. But they took a whole wall. I couldn't find a picture of it, Israel. That was the one I was looking for. A whole wall they put with pinboard that then they covered with beautiful paper and painted kind of a chalk black. And then I hung 1,200 of these in a sphere that was 1.5 meters wide. Is that right? I mean, and it was a stunning work. Anyway, these are some of the quills that were in that piece. And I still have, I have piles of these things if anybody wants any. And the last slide. I haven't put you to sleep, have I, Israel? The last slide. So this is a part of a drawing that is 1.5 meters by 750, if I can mix those metaphor type things. And it's really a diagram, kind of a circuit board thing. And it just, again, is my kind of ridiculous obsession. All those squares are 1 centimeter. So I rule the whole thing first. And then my dad was an audio engineer, and I'm really inspired by all those little diodes and transistors and things. And that's what I want to make next out of this porcelain. But in the meantime, I have to satisfy myself with doing these really intricate drawings. And I've got a son who's really like into Bitcoin. He's out of Bitcoin, into other cryptocurrencies, but he talks all about the narrative and relating the this and the that. And he's really inspired me to, so I kind of write a whole story with this diagram that is, mega, huge and very, very technical, but it's all full of hogwash explanations and numbers and letters and pluses and minuses and things. So I kind of am going between the manufacture using old clay I've saved from years ago, and this, one is kind of out of control. But one of the things I have to say that drives me is really just always having something that you can relatively easily go back to. I don't have access to a foundry, or I even fire my things at a friend's kiln. I don't have, so I'm here in a room. And so you really draw upon, and I'm alone, I don't have a community. I so envy you guys who have a, community, and you can collaborate, and you've got, most of you've talked about collaboration or having access to other people who are interested enough in what you're doing to participate however they can. And that is, I'm not boo-hooing me, but I'm just saying, so it makes me really focus on what I can achieve just in this space. That's my story.
I think it's so valid what you're saying, and I completely empathize. Just as another, I'm 50 years old this year, and I did my postgrad at Elam last year, so it was just like amazing to find my tribe, and like And that's, if anything came out of that degree, it was that community that I now take forward with me. So hear you with the kids. And great, so great that your creative libido sort of found its thing, because I almost just had to dismiss it for years, because I don't know, for me it's so much more of a, I need a lot of thinking time and staring at the wall and then like playing around with stuff and moving matter around and whatever and making a mess, and I just couldn't do it. So I just sort of like went, okay, I'll just do that another day. And it kind of like messes you up after a while. I didn't think of that. Like that would have been a great idea. And I think it's beautiful. Yeah, well done.
I'm 70 this year, so it's about time I had time to do studio work.
Oh, good on you. Yeah.
Is it gonna make you feel bad that I was born the year that you got that porcelain?
No, not at all, because I'm teaching the daughters of kids I bought that porcelain for, and I never used it. So
I just wanted to say, Leslie, that your attention to detail is just absolutely incredible.
Stupid.
It's amazing. And those talisman, they really, for me, I don't know if this is anyone else, they look like fly fishing.
Fly fishing, same here. I got that. Yeah.
You know, and I wondered if that would be a really like interesting starting off point, because you know, the way that those are created is kind of in the way that you approach your work, which is just like I don't know, they really spoke to me that way. And thank you for sharing. That was so fun. I'm so glad that the 27-year-old porcelain's like doing it.
I want to see your colored clay, because I used to do a lot of that too. So but I wasn't so rude as to go to your website as somebody else's.
Oh, I was just on yours. So like
oh, that hasn't been updated for so many years. It's frightening.
Oh, looking good. Oh,
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Leslie. When we saw images of your work at the gallery, we thought that it was some type of organic matter, and we were like, well, what is this? We need to freeze it. We can't have it. And then we read it, that was porcelain. Okay, cool. But it had this very bodily kind of like, what is this kind of thing? So it's quite interesting.
Yeah, they're very, very bone-like. But just it's having that artist's hand and that touch. I mean, we've all talked about it. Those who've been given the opportunity, that thumbprint that's going to be there, or the spit used to moisten the fibers. All of that is just so important, and I think we lose a lot of that with a lot of methodologies, but never, what do I know?
Awesome. Thank you so much. Michelle, Andrew, would either of you like to go?
They'll say no, and then we're stuck.
Yeah, I might.
I don't mind.
You sure? I thought I might be a good segue around the woman's work. So yeah. Yeah, because my work, Seeds and Sack, it developed out of an exhibition at Mother Gallery in Auckland, Tamaki Makaurau. And yeah, so it really, it was just an incredible space. I really loved, what we're saying about working as women, and how I'm kind of interested in how that actually informs my practice a bit, my choice of material. So in this space at Mother, I had a 3-week curatorial period. So I was able to kind of work on the installation. And I don't know if you've got the images, Israel, that you want to pop up. Yeah, and it's a very simple work. This is basically my practice is working primarily with harakeke. And this shot just shows the cautery stalks and the little pods at the end. So the next slide really shows the kurawaka, which is the seed capsules in detail. And I work with for this work anyway, I worked seeds by opening up each of the pods and extracting the seeds, and then sifting the seeds, removing any sort of old dried flower stems as the basis of the work. So yeah, primarily I'm really interested in the idea because I work with harakeke, and I studied, you know, as a weaver, I've studied Māori weaving. You know, my practice is underpinned by a weaving tikanga, which, you know, can be translated as right actions. And it also encompasses the idea of material holding a life force, or Māori. So, so basically my practice is sort of underpinned by that framework. And in a recent master's research project, I explored that idea of a life force of material a little bit further. And I was also looking at it in sort of alongside agential realism theories of Karen Barad, which, you know, she's a quantum physicist, and it sort of sounds a bit of a mouthful, but yeah, it really kind of parallels a lot of the thinking with, you know, that are present when I'm weaving or working with material. So really it's the working with material that informs my work. And yeah, that's sort of really where I'm at. I've got here, it's the material and the actions and events of making. So that durational process of being able to, you know, that time that I spend with material and working with it, I think I start to form a really deep understanding of what the material will do, and also what its sort of inherent qualities are. So in this shot, which you just a shout out to Sam Tozer, who took the photos at Mother Gallery, because he just seemed to capture a lot of my material is quite hard to kind of get the detail, and he just seemed to really capture it. And the seeds here, like the individual seeds, are amazing. You know, they have this super shiny sort of silicon black surface to it. And I've worked with those, and I'm interested in that idea of accumulation, like of a material accumulating over time. So I've added a handful, you know, a few handfuls at a time over that 3-week period to build the work. So in the next shot, I think you kind of get a detail of the sack, and I worked with the sack, you know, probably because of red, you know, being like associated with feminine and lifeblood. But I sort of came to realize that the fact that the sack had this connection with the domestic was really probably as significant for me. It's like from a wood fire, which I don't have very often, but it was a fire I had during the winter of 2020 with family, like, which was that COVID lockdown. And so this, you know, like the sack was sitting in my mum's garage, and like this is very much her, and a lot of how I'm learning how to work is I really like to work with material at hand. So I have drawn on that sack, and just as a method of holding and containing the seeds, but because of the texture and the slipperiness, they just will fall through the sack. So for me, that's kind of really important, because it creates what I'm interested in. It partly, I mean, it comes through from the idea of a material having its own life force and being aware of that when I'm working with it. But it's, you know, it's around what I'm trying to do in my work is to use the qualities of material and all of the forces around it to sort of activate the material, so it appears to be acting of its own kind of autonomous agency, is sort of how I'm terming it at the moment. And in a way, that's sort of what happens, because the seeds just sort of start to disperse themselves, and they're very responsive to air movement and air currents. So the little counterweight pebble that I've used to hold up the sack is working with these unseen forces. So I often use gravity, tension, airflow, I work quite a bit with water. So it's a kind of a really common theme within my work, and what I'm trying to express. And I think in this work, and like in a number of other works, I'm really interested in that idea of my accumulating and working with a material like a natural material like harakeke, is I get a real sense of like it becomes like a caring for, there's a caring for the material as it accumulates and grows. And I'm interested in I've lost my train of thought here, sorry. And really what that is about for me is I'm sort of interested in the idea of that entanglement. So the unseen forces in the material and working with material. I've, in a way, like I'm trying to strip the story and myself out of the work a little bit and really just make it about the material as much as I can and the qualities of the material. So for me, this is an idea of and activating the work is an idea of intraconnection, which is just a way of seeing and experiencing the material as that rather than that sort of interconnection between things, which is indicating that there's two separate objects or entities, is sort of really coming from a way of thinking and doing that there is no separation, and that when I'm working in that kind of way of thinking, that a lot of things start to happen that would not be present otherwise. So I see that, and I think for me that's what I often experience as a weaver and a maker. It's like something just starts to happen and it's like I don't even know where it came from. So I'm really interested in that idea of working with things that are, I kind of see it as beyond my sense perception. It's like some sort of a bigger picture happening. So I'm interested in this idea of being connected intrinsically to a universal life force or Māori that breathes life into the material world and the materials I'm working with. And it's through the materials, its very materiality, that the work evidences the relational nature and cyclical pulse of life. And that relational nature of material calls for an ongoing responsibility to material and the natural world. So that's sort of my thinking and ideas behind the work. Yeah, so I think it's pretty much me.
Just like to say this work is really hard to install. And it is like we come in the gallery every now and again and it's like the seeds just move, like who knows how they move, they just pop out and end up all over the floor. That's interesting. It does have a life of its own, that work.
Did you have it installed in the same way at Whakatane at the gallery there?
Well, I've kind of I gave it over to them really to kind of kaitiaki for me, and I'm kind of hoping that somebody's dipped their hands in there, and because the seeds just are incredible to, just that feeling. So I'm not sure, Israel, mate, you might want to answer that.
So it is displayed somewhat the same, but instead of straight on the floor, because our floor is kind of grey, so the seeds would get quite lost. It's just on a plinth, a raised plinth. So, it's more or less in its thing. But it is one of the ones that the kids love to go to and pick up all the seeds. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I love that idea of the work, kind of like there's something that draws, and children to it. I really like that sense, because I think for me that's it kind of creates that idea of I'm not creating something static. It really adds to it in a way. Yeah, so it's quite a challenge really to work with, and it was really interesting in the mother space because all the stuff was going on. Like Nat, who kind of runs it, she's a mother, and like she's just got stuff happening all the time. So it was really interesting, like that, how that whole idea would kind of like disrupt the work in a way, and it really started to inform it, and it was such a great. I don't know, it was a really good experience as a maker to not have to sort of think it's going to be static, like I'm going to set it up and that's it. You know, like it could keep continuing to move and change. And I think that was really good for me. It's a good process for me to work with that. Yeah.
Michelle,
Awesome.
I saw that work at Mother.
Mm.
You're at the opening, and you had other work there with Lucy Bormans, is that right?
Yeah, yes.
So Nat and Lucy were part of my tribe at Elam.
Yeah,
Yeah, which is great. Yeah.
Yeah, really amazing space to
Yeah,
be in
really, and
that.
great concept. So the concept is that the last person to exhibit chooses the next person, and it's sort of this torch passing or mentor sort of opportunity to invite. It's quite lovely.
Mm. Yeah,
Awesome.
Woman artists. Yeah.
Thank you, Michelle, for sharing. We better
Thanks, Israel.
through and you would like to go next, that will be great. I'll just find your images.
Go.
Pass the parcel.
Yeah, we're past bath time now. It's bedtime.
Okay, gotcha.
Oh yeah, you can just put up any image. I think I only sent 2. I'll be short because I'm not very good at talking about my artwork anyway, and I get a bit nervous. So yeah. I guess my practice has evolved around photography, conceptual photography, sort of thinking about form, and I've recently mainly worked with wood and plexiglass and photography to create these sculptures. It seems to becoming part of my language. This work, I thought about it for quite a while. I'm interested in sometimes pieces of furniture that have I guess multiple meanings, and so I was looking at the library staircases that a lot of wealthy people use. They're often in antique shops, and they're really just a symbol of I've got a big book collection, but they weren't used, so it's like a piece of furniture for display. And I think it lends itself nicely to a sculptural form. It's very sort of classical, the sort of spiral composition, golden ratio perhaps. So yeah, as a work, it felt like something nice to make. And of course, it's there's a few conceptual strands coming through. Clearly, it doesn't function. It's fragile, and it turns on itself, so it will turn you back away. So yeah, there's the stuff that can be pulled into that conversation, and I guess I always hope that my work can talk a lot better than I can about it when people look at it and engage with it. There's been an interest in New Zealand building materials, the pink bats. To me, they kind of had like a pink marble feel to them, and they're also quite horrible as well to deal with. This sculpture, apart from the photographic process and the plexiglass, is all made out of stuff that's been thrown away. So it's just from the skip at Placemakers. They let me go and pick out wood, which is pretty cool. And it's pine, but I've used French polish technique to really try and make something look quite beautiful and invest a lot of time into a material that's often taken for granted. What else can I say? I don't know. The reproduction of surface is quite interesting to me, and I'd like to think there's a few little sort of visual tricks in my work, and other works I do as well, using photography in a slightly different way, and combining that with the language of sculpture as well, to try and bring out a new narrative, a different story. And it's ever so simple. So these, just as a practical example, these pink bats that I photographed, they have two sides, of course. It's like the thick, so you can see the edge, and each one's different. But I don't like to manipulate my photographs. I try and print everything to scale, to the exact scale, which is actually very hard. And so these are printed to scale, and the color's very exact too. But also, to avoid using Photoshop, I cut the pink bats on the inside so they fold out flat. So you've actually got that edge for my photograph is folded out flat, and then I'm photographing it on a rig I've made with my studio lighting coming down. So yeah, it's kind of, I guess, quite an analog process of manipulating the object ready to be bent as a photo. Yeah, so I think that's probably enough. I don't know. Do you guys have any questions?
Actual staircase in the exhibition, or the photograph of the staircase?
I'm sorry, I don't understand what you mean.
Well, is the actual three-dimensional staircase in Whakatane?
Yeah.
Okay, not the photograph. Okay.
Oh yeah, no, the sculpture's there. Yeah. Not the photo of it. Yeah.
And that's, the pink bats are encased in the plexiglass or perspex or whatever you call it.
Yeah, the photo of them. Yep. Yeah. So you can see, like, if you moved behind it, you can see, like, the foam core, just how it's sitting in the space. It's quite simple. Yeah. I like to think that, most of my work, when you see it, it's not overly complicated as well as far as the concept. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Thanks. It took a long time to make.
It did.
Well done.
The joins and the details in the work are like so precise too. Like the judge really commented on how you put things together and how they're like really particular.
That was cool. I do enjoy that and obsess over the details. Bob talks about it a lot better than I do, so just look at his thing. It's way better. Like,
also, funnily enough, the gallery is in a library too.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. Yeah. I like that. Yeah.
What's the title of the work?
Turn Around.
Mm-hmm.
Simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Sorry. It to me, it has like this real humility to it, like simplicity, but there's something so complex about it too. Like there's just so much more to this story.
I'd like to hope so. And I guess that's my motivation for making art. Yeah.
Goes on forever. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just going to say a similar thing. There's a humbleness to the materials, but then there's this beautiful craftsmanship and attention to detail. It's really quite stunning. Is it steam bent, the timber, like the curve?
Yeah. I actually, that curve took ages, because I steam bend the wood, and I just use my electric fry pan and a big plastic box and steam it up and make it. I make a big, like a a big jig to like clamp it on, and then you let it dry, and then 24 hours later you can sort of then glue them together and do the same thing. But my first few attempts didn't work, so yeah, it took it's quite a process. And while I was doing this was when Sarah was pregnant as well, and it was my goal to get this done before Eleanor, our baby, was born. And I had literally probably about 4 or 5 hours left to work on it, to put the photos in, and she called me saying we need to go to the hospital. So it's quite a special work in that way. It was kind of funny. I didn't quite get to finish it, but yeah.
I was going to say it's elegant. You know, there's a lyricism with each step and curve that really is engaging. It's really elegant.
Thank you.
Andrew, I just want to say the insight into your process when you were talking was really amazing. You know, I can like view the jig when you taking a photo of the pink bats, and I can see you like scrapping around in a placemaker's bin, and that like really, really adds a lot. And your craftsmanship is incredible. But when you came at it and said that you like from a photography background, that was like the last thing I was expecting you to say. And so to turn it into this kind of 3D and marry those two, you know, the 2D and the 3D together, that's just incredible.
Yeah, I'm definitely quite interested in I guess photography practice or conceptual photography and sculpture coming together in that way. And I think there's sort of some new territory there that I can explore, which is quite nice. Yeah.
Yeah, incredible and great description.
Thank you. Cheers.
Andrew, I just wanted to ask, like, what did it mean for you to have your work like acknowledged in this way?
Oh, I'm just rapt, blown away. Yeah. Very, very thankful and grateful. It's nice to be to have work acknowledged and like the life of the work to carry on. Very, very, very happy. It's like, you know, we all do a lot of work and very seldom get recognition for it. So it's really, really nice for that to happen. Yeah.
Did any of your works sell? Anybody here?
I could probably answer that. Leslie's.
Ah.
Well done.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Sorry, I haven't emailed you yet to let you know, but anyway, thank you, Andrew, for sharing. Yeah, it is cool insight into just hearing people's backgrounds. In the last kind of Zooey, we kind of spoke about like how everyone was painters and then they kind of transitioned into this 3-dimensional thing, which I think is real interesting. And, you know, for me, 3D or 2D, there's not really, you know, it's all kind of a fluid creative process where, you know, whatever comes out of it comes out of it. But it's always interesting to see what practices people come out of and then what works get put into the award show. And this year there's an amazing collection of works. Thank you guys all for entering, and we're so lucky to be able to have this exhibition and to be showing your guys' works. So yeah, that's just a big thanks for us, and yeah, keep doing what you're doing, because yeah, artists are the best and we need more of you guys, just, you know.
Well, thank you so much for
all that kind of thing. And we value our artists so much, you know, without you guys, we couldn't really have our spaces. Our spaces would really be nothing. But yeah, I just like to, I guess, close us up. This has been a real fruitful Zoom for me. Hopefully it didn't take up too much of your family time on the other side of the screen. But yeah, we just like to extend our thanks to you guys for carving out this time in your night. And yeah, so thank you all so much for joining us. I did forget to say at the start, but we did record this, so we're just gonna put it on Facebook, and you can more than welcome to share it around. So I hope that's okay with anyone. If anyone has any super strong urges against that, yeah, just let me know. And yeah, we'll try edit you out or something. But yeah, thanks heaps, everyone. I wish you the best night for whatever you have in store for the rest of your evening. And I just thank you. So thanks so much. Yeah, you're more than welcome to leave now if you like. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Israel. Great to talk, everyone.
Yes.
Lovely to meet you all.
Yeah, likewise.
Bye.